All right, awesome. Some people are joining still. There we go. All right. One more time, here is the community meeting link for anyone that new that's joining. Just please sign in. So yeah, I recorded the meeting, so I don't see any new faces. If there's any new members that would like to introduce themselves, yeah, please, they can do so right now. Yeah, Marcella, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say hi again. It's been, I don't know, several months that I've been able to join, but I'm finally able to join again. I am a research scientist at Intel working on software supply chain security. And yeah, generally just interested in understanding, yeah, kind of what we might be able to contribute to GUAC. So yeah, hi.
Glad to have you.
Thanks, Marcella.
Thanks.
I think that should be everyone. So yeah, so let's get started on the agenda. So I think, Mike, do you want to kick us off with a quick update from the OpenSSF side?
Sure, yeah. So a couple things. So one is we are officially now an OpenSSF incubating project. We had some discussions just to make sure that it was the right place for GUAC was OpenSSF was the right place for GUAC. We're getting a lot of great support. That support obviously probably by the next time we have one of these meetings, it'll most likely be on the OpenSSF Zoom. So just so you know, and there'll probably be a new meeting notes doc that's under the ownership of OpenSSF. Right now, a lot of it's just, there's some paperwork that still needs to be signed to make it like 100% official, like where, the maintainers of GUAC, who are ostensibly the owners of the code, need to sign essentially the ownership of GUAC itself to OpenSSF and the LF. And there's some, details there that don't really matter to most folks, but it's more or less just, by this time next month, expect the code will be literally owned by OpenSSF and it'll be 100% under neutral governance and so on. But along with that comes a lot of nice little things like, we can now get funding for things from the OpenSSF. We can get support from the OpenSSF on things like, graphics for upcoming things. We can get webinars, OpenSSF trainings. We can record and do that through that mechanism, as well as potentially promoting the project via like a GUAC booth at an upcoming conference. And so that's moving along. Expect there to be a couple of changes here and there as we move over. Most likely the code will stay in the same spot as it is today. We're also looking to make sure that the documents that we're about to sign are also completely transparent to folks within the community. So we're working on building out a governance repo that those documents will live under, so that folks can know, like, okay, well, on this date it kind of moved over, and the same way GUAC is trying to provide transparency to the supply chain, we want folks to better understand that. Another thing that's kind of related to that is, there's a lot of interest in collaboration between the community within the OpenSSF. So stuff like, what can we do to start supporting things like GitTough and things like, for folks who maybe have noticed, we now have a securityinsights.yaml, and the securityinsights.yaml is a OpenSSF project around trying to standardize how different security properties of your project, like where the SBOMs live or where your license lives, can all exist in one centralized location, and some stuff there. And then, obviously there's interest on potentially ingesting that as well. So a bunch of great things on there. Another just very quick update is, and I know this is, most of you are probably not going, but for folks who are going to Open Source Summit Japan, I'll be giving a talk on GUAC. I'll be giving actually a couple of talks related to GUAC, one for OpenSSF Day and one at the actual Open Source Summit Japan. So that's another thing that's coming down the line. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about the OpenSSF stuff, feel free to reach out to me and so on. Any questions about any of it so far? Okay, back over to you, Parth.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, so next we'll move on to Jeff. He's going to talk about some of the changes we're making to the in-memory, some improvements, especially adding a key value interface. So I'll hand it over to Jeff to give you more details on that.
Thanks, Parth. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everybody see? Okay, great. So yeah, a little bit of background. Here's our docs page for the how GUAC components work together. GUAC is the big piece. Well, GUAC is more than just the green piece, but mostly it's this big green piece. At the top of it is the GraphQL query API. That's the API that we define for all of the nodes and relationships and verbs and things like that. Behind the API, we have like this database idea, and the GraphQL interface is an abstraction layer, and there can be multiple databases that GUAC supports behind the GraphQL layer. Currently, we support. Well, currently there's a default implementation, which is a custom code written in Go to just store all of the GUAC data in memory, basically. But the plan was to have multiple databases supported on the back end. Originally, we used Neo4j. We've done work on Orengo and Ent, which supports relational databases, Postgres, etc. And potentially more to come with OpenCipher and Gremlin as popular graph query languages. However, with the in-memory database, in-memory implementation that we've had multiple times people ask, hey, is there a way that we could store, just use that implementation and store the data to disk so that we could shut down GUAC and then start it back up and have it kind of pick up where it left off. That, among other reasons, I've opened this proposal, which essentially is to use the current in-memory backend code that does all of the actual querying and comparison with an interface to change the interface on the back end of that to something that can be swapped out. So actually, before I go through this, let me just show you the current code. So the current in-memory code on the back end, it has a bunch of Go maps and Go lists, and then an index here, which is just like a map of integer to node. And then every time you do a query, there's a big structure that's stored in memory and a map. And then if I just do find c.artifact, you can see that the code is really just indexing into maps to store or to retrieve the data. So the proposal is to take away that direct indexing and to put in an interface between our in-memory logic and the actual Go map and list storage. And the interface would be so simple that it would be very easy to write adapters to different kinds of key value stores so that we could have something like optional persistence or other easily swappable implementations on the back end. So the proposal covers the interface, the three methods would be get, set, and just keys, so you can iterate over all of the items in a collection. And then here's just an example of the default implementation, this would be replacing the current in-memory implementation that stores in maps. And this would just be a big map here, and essentially the same thing with just that layer of indirection in between. Any questions on this so far?
Hey, hi, this is Naveen here.
Hey, Naveen.
Question on the keys.
Yeah.
Let's assume I'm implementing for my own custom database. And if it's a large enough, won't this one method return a million
Yeah.
keys? Okay, how are you plan to add paging, or is there something specific, or like?
Yeah.
Because if you're defining a interface like now, I'm not trying to push you down, but I'm just trying to be, hey, have you thought about this specifically?
Yeah, I have, and I think that will need to be necessary as some kind of paging or iterator that keys actually returns. I agree with you there. So I'll use that to jump to the next thing I wanted to show, which is just kind of an example of kind of how easy it is to write backends. Like I checked out, so here's the default implementation. I was just testing a few different technologies for backends. Like the Redis implementation would look like this. It's essentially hget, hset, and hkeys. And yeah, so Naveen, the keys here, they say, you shouldn't do this. You should just run a scan that returns up to like 1,000 keys and then return 1,000 at a time. That's something that I think we need to do. But I can add that pretty easily. Another example is that I was taking a look at was I think it was this Thai key value store. It also has a scan here. It doesn't actually let you just grab everything because you have to. It doesn't have a buckets natively, so you have to use the like prefixes, and then just for testing here, I have like 1,000 or 10,000. So yeah, I think we would need that scan feature for the keys or some kind of like iterator. But again, this is quite simple here. It's a get, a put, and a scan. And then the other thing I was testing out was this Bolt. This is like a on-disk single file backend, which isn't very performant, but is very simple and easy to get GUAC up and running persistently without a database. And this is kind of the same thing where it's the get here is create bucket if not exist, the get, the put, and I didn't write keys here because I was just testing it out. But as you can see, it's quite simple to write backends, or to test out different implementations here. The disadvantage of using a key value store is that there is no querying happening like in a database. Like a real database, of course, you pass in when you're sending a complicated query to GUAC, it's converting that and passing that to a complicated query to a database that is, matching nodes on certain fields. None of that is happening here. If a node can't be queried by the full key, which is basically the concatenation of all the fields, then there has to be a scan done, and the in-memory code that we already have is doing that matching and returning the nodes that match. And one last thing I wanted to show is basically the change in the backend code. It's pretty minimal. There is a lot of things that needed to be. There's a lot of small touches to the backend code, but I can update. I've already been working on updating some of the backend code to use this interface as a test. But the main changes here is that each node definitely has to have a key. So that's used on the key value store. And then when the current code is adding to the index or setting those maps, it would just change that to these helper functions that I wrote that would call that key value store interface. So any more questions here? Hey, Nadine, go ahead.
Amazing. I really love this. One of the questions, would this also handle ENT, or this is going to be separate from ENT?
This is going to be separate from ENT. So ENT would be a full-fledged database implementation. Like when you query for all packages with the name foo, ENT converts that to a SQL query, and then that happens on the back end on the actual database. And then that database only returns packages with the name foo. So with this implementation, it would be the same as the current in-memory, which it has to scan through all packages and look for ones with the name foo. So for here, it wouldn't actually need to pull all the packages from the key value store using this interface. Ingestion happens pretty quickly with this, because on ingestion, any matching you're doing, you have every single field. So you get the key. It's just a key lookup. But on querying, if it's not querying by ID, you're going to be doing scans of all the nodes.
Thanks, Jeff.
Which is not different from what the in-memory one does currently anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So
So in-memory one is currently doing that. It's all the code is written where we want to reuse that code that we have that does that logic and kind of see if that will work with some other kind of external store. Hi, Kevin. Question?
Yes, some of the in-mem filtering is quite complex and doesn't naturally fit this. Can you show us how you're dealing with that just now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll show you like package, for example. Where's package? So I've done package, I've done artifact, I've done a couple of verbs. So so here's all the structs. These stay the same. One thing that changes here is like the names. Instead of being directly containing name structures, it's just an array of IDs. Let's see, the keys. Where's all the keys? Oh, yeah, the keys are further down. So the keys are like, for the key for a namespace, it's the parent, which is the type, and then the namespace name. Keys here. The package version already had a helper for key. On ingesting packages, so it has to look up each one by key, and then if it finds it, you're good. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'll go back down to the query here. So the query, it's using all the same logic that already exists. Yeah, so it tries to build the namespace by looking up, if the type is specified, it tries to get it by key. If it's not specified, it has to iterate through all types. It calls the .keys. The matching code is the same. It's just every time it needs to look up something, it has to call this .keys or by key to find looking it up. And then the code that actually does those comparisons is the same. Let me show you, like build package version. This is trying to get a package version that matches a filter. All of this code is the same. It's just either iterating through all the versions or getting a version by key if everything exists. Like here, we try to get it by key because version, subpath, and qualifiers are specified. So we can look that up by key. Otherwise, we need to iterate through all the versions. This one is iterating through all the versions on an existing name node. This is how it was working before, but each time it iterates through, it has to pull the value instead of just accessing it directly in like the Go map. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the SBOM stuff that I'm doing at the moment, because diving down to packages, to artifacts, to dependencies, to occurrences, all from the SBOM,
Mhm. Yeah.
which I can imagine is going to look horrendous.
Everything, everything that happens on the ingestion side is going to be the same. The GraphQL interface is the same. It's just kind of what happens after the ingestion.
Yeah, it's the implementation I'm thinking about. It's yeah. I started looking at it this morning. It's the only part that I've left on that PR, and it's starting to look quite messy. So I'm having to think about it.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, so mostly just want to raise awareness in case there's any concerns or questions here. I am still working on it. I am looking at where, if there's a way that we can do the JSON serialization inside the adapter, that would mean that we don't have to do it for the in-memory implementation. So the interface is likely to change a little bit, and also because of the scans that you mentioned, Naveen. So it is a little bit in flux, but I wanted to get the information out there for any kind of feedback, or everybody's interested or just wants to know. Cool. All right, Parth, I'll hand it back to you. And again, if you have any comments, feel free to leave them on the issue, or just talk about it in Slack.
Yeah, the issue is linked in the meeting notes. So if there's any comments or anything else you want to add to the issue, please do so. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Let's move on to Marco. Marco is going to give us a quick update on the end side also. Marco?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Today, the last pull request for the end backend has been merged, which means that right now, all the queries and mutations for both software trees and evidence trees have been implemented. So basically, the whole ingestion will work for every SBOM. The next goal is to cover the topological queries, so nodes, neighbors, and path, which is something partially implemented and something totally missing, which is something I started working with. I think the approach will be always the same that we adopted so far with the end backend, so iterative. Maybe I will start with some neighbors implementation, some tests, so that they can be used as a skeleton, so that we might have some further contributions in order to work in parallel on these different implementations. It would be awesome and great, which I think is the situation it is, and then it will be fully complete. At that point, maybe it will be worth running the end-to-end test against the end backend, just like it happens for the in-memory one, as a kind of way of certifying also in pull request that things are working as expected with the end-to-end test and script. Once it's done, let's say the midterm plan is to then go into the optimization phase and make and try to improve the performances. Right now, everything is is really just done in serial, and there's no concurrency or parallelism. I played again a little bit with this. Obviously, a Postgres database as a backend is something that can accept, hundreds or of thousands of transactions at the same time, and we have to leverage all this power we can have in the Postgres backend with multiple insertion at the same time. Everything is idempotent on the endpoints, so we are all based on upselts approach. So even if something is inserted and the next one fails, if it's re-executed, the upsert will skip the insertion. Everything is meant to work this way, already optimized through Ent. And so this is the kind of, the short term is to have the topological queries. The mid-term is to have the optimization in place. And And I think that's all on the end side. I don't know if there's any question.
Yeah, so I had a quick question. Would it be more worthwhile to do the optimization first before the path and neighbors or so forth? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, that's fine for me. It's again, I did some changes to the packages and its dependency because I had some SBOMs with a lot of packages and dependencies. We can start from there and again, apply in multiple pull requests. I will maybe also ask some mates to help me with this so that we can work in parallel. I will open a pull request tomorrow or next week with a basic implementation so that we can discuss and kind of approve the concurrent approach. Once done, we can go full steam with implementing in all the other resources. Yeah, that's fine.
I guess the question is like, do you expect the optimization to change anything like with regards to the path and nodes and neighbors query, I guess? Like if something is going to change.
No, the optimization is meant to work in the bulk ingestion methods.
Okay.
To ingest basically concurrently and trying, to use as much as we can the Postgres backend. With a simple test I run, really, we are talking about of orders of magnitude in the improvement, going to thousands of transactions per second. So really it makes not comparable within memory, but at least not so, desperate when compared to the in-memory one. Yeah, sure, Naveen.
Question. So you tested for Postgres, but I'm assuming the ENT is irrespective of the Postgres or anything. It should work for any of the ENT backends.
Yeah.
My ignorance.
Yeah. No, that's the approach. I think that at the very beginning, Ivan made some assumptions on the Postgres backend to make it easier. The first implementation, because the first pull request has been huge. But yeah, obviously we rely on what Ent provides as the supported backends, and if there's any kind of workaround down at the very beginning, just for Postgres, we can remove it. That's it. I would love to arrive to the point of being able to test, with multiple database backends for Ent. Yeah, it would be great.
Sorry if I was not being specific. So we're not doing anything specific for Postgres. We're just using plain out Ent specific. That's what I was trying to mean if I wasn't being clear.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that Ent is pretty transparent. Like you can do some things that like are Postgres specific, and it'll let you. And we might be doing some of that stuff since we're only testing on Postgres right now. But I think finding those and fixing those for something like MariaDB would be pretty easy. I did try to do some testing on SQLite earlier, and it was a kind of a disaster. So like SQLite requires a whole bunch of like thread protection and things like that. Like I don't know that we'd ever want to do all of that that's needed. Just FYI, but maybe.
The reason I was saying that is Ent is coming out with a beta support for TiDB. So I'm just, if you wrote specific SQL, will it affect any of the stuff that Ent somebody else supports, or do we want to call out say, hey, I'm going to do Ent only for Postgres. This is what it's tested with. It's not tested with anything else. That's my concern. Just an FYI.
So I think as a project, we're kind of like saying, right now we're only testing Postgres, but we're not saying you're not allowed to do anything else. Like if anybody else wants to test with something else and fix the problems, I think that would be very welcome. Or that might be something that people get to at some point. But I think that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I tried the same with SQLite because it was, too easy, and I had, the same issues. I think also we are using Ent with all the GraphQL part, which is meant also, for example, for covering the need for having unique IDs, right? that let you, address all the resources and being able to read from the right table when you just provide an ID. And all this stuff, has to be evaluated if it works with every backend in the end, because it's based on scaling the keys, do partitioning of keys and so on and so forth. And so, but as Jeff said, whoever could test and in case fix is more than welcome, really, more than welcome.
Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you, Margot. All right. So real quick, give an update on the Orango side. I mean, everyone I think should be aware by now that the license on the Orango open source has changed, right? It's no longer Apache. So the thought process here is that, it was actually very close to being completed. So I am kind of still going forward with completing the Orango backend. So what I'm working on right now is the, similar to Marco, is like the path, nodes, and neighbors queries. So nodes and path have been created. Those two queries are working, and now it's just the neighbors query that I'm trying to finish up. So that's a work in progress right now. And in terms of like usage by the community, right? So I think like there's a lot of questions about how the license is going to work and so forth, right? So there is, the binaries themselves there's a community edition version of the binaries that are still going to be available for use, but there is a data cap. So there's 100 gigabytes of data cap on that. So you can go past that point. So it's great for evaluation and so forth, but I think in terms of actually using it at scale, right, it's something that we would have to use like the enterprise version of Orango to go forward with that. There is the other thing about building from source, which is excluded from the license, right? But then you lose some of the features that could be part of the open source release as offered by Orango, because it could be like a stripped down version, and they could be adding stuff to the actual release in the open source space that is not in the source code or something. So there's trade-offs and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of the project, right, we decided that this is not the end of it kind of thing. Like Orango, I think we should just keep moving forward. So if there's anyone, like if there's users or other enterprises kind of want to use Orango, it should be still available. But at the same time, like Jeff was mentioning in the diagram, because it's database agnostic, we have the GraphQL layer, we have Ent, we have the in-memory, we have the OpenCipher. So I think there's still a lot of interest from the OpenCipher side to get that implemented, and then that can be used on Neo4j, Neptune, and whatever else kind of thing. And then Gremlin, right? So one of the community members, he's not on the call right now, but Jesse White has been working on has already started working on a Gremlin like backend implementation. So he's actually working to get that a little bit cleaned up and updated, and then push that into GUAC. So if other community members kind of want to contribute, like if they want to contribute or have expertise within Gremlin, we can start building that piece out. And again, similar to Ent, right? Similar to Ent and OpenCipher, that will allow allow you to connect to other different databases that are compatible and so forth with Gremlin. Any questions? All right, awesome. I think that was everything we had on the agenda. So if there's any other like open questions, any kind of discussions anyone wanted to have, we can open the floor for a bit. Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on the Orango stuff, is there anybody out there that's interested in still using Orango and wants to like take a look at how to build it? Okay, so I'll take that as nobody here. Yeah, that's something that might still be an option. So yeah, if anybody wants to do that, then maybe we can work together.
I mean, besides that, I think there is a lot of features, a lot of things that are on the issue log. If you take a look, so if you want to contribute, if you're a first-time contributor, there are some good first issues. If anybody wants to take a look, and also right we're keep moving forward with the features and enhancements. Right, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to start using GUAC and adopting GUAC. So I think one of the things that we're looking into is like a REST API. So that's Nathan on the call. Actually, he started some preliminary work on that piece and having with the GraphQL, right? We can offer a REST API that people can actually utilize and get the same kind of results back as they would from like a GraphQL endpoint kind of thing. So trying to make it more pluggable, more usable for everybody in the community. So trying to push forward in that direction. Oh, Marco?
Yeah, this is something we are also very interested in kind of creating the REST issue that Jeff Field was about, for example, porting the query vulnerability CLI functionality into a REST endpoint. This kind of functionality, if possible as a plugin, it would be great. In the work we have been doing so far, it looks like it could be, how to say, backend agnostic. So it could be that you create everything just like the CLI is doing, right? But without the GraphQL layer, just tell me which is the backend and you query the backend. So a kind of plugin, you put the algorithm, the set of queries you want to run, the packages with an SBOM for them, find the vulnerabilities because you are just interested in we call them products, the packages with an SBOM. So not all the vulnerabilities, just the one affecting the products that we have in GUAC. It's a kind of easy, it's a pair of queries and it's done. So having something that could be, easy extendable, maybe kind of community endpoints, not fully supported, kind of, and not enhancement, but something like, covering maybe use cases that more people have than the current one, and it would be great in the end. Yeah, it would be. If there's something we will want to contribute for sure.
Awesome, that sounds good.
Maybe the other one is about maybe something really we can also take offline. But I open an issue about having the edges within the software trees available. Obviously, it's because I'm working on this stuff about paths basically, and I'm a little bit killing the backend every time I reach a package version because it goes up through the package name, namespace, and type, and and everything in the end. Yeah. So if there's any kind of thought, I'm happy to contribute and not keep kind of just announcement kind of without contributing back to the community. That's my only concern.
Yeah, we could definitely take a look at that issue. I mean, I think it does make sense to actually have that separation between the the edges that make up the actual package tree or something, or source tree. So you're not rebuilding something unnecessarily if you don't need to, right? I think that's the main concern. Is that what's happening on the inside? Is that you rebuilding the whole package?
That's the main concern is about the performances, because being able to, let's say I have a package version and I want to know all the vulnerabilities, right? Or if it's affected by any vulnerability, I can traverse with a path in the end. I'm not able to tell GUAC to not go up to the package name from the package name and so on. And it kills the backend. We are talking about less than 1 second compared to minutes in the end, because if there are a lot of packages, a lot of SBOM, the traversal never ends. Yes, yeah, it ends, but with not something that is usable in the end, compared to excluding the package name and it goes straight out, let's say, of the of the package tree. Because I discussed with Jeff, I fully understand that the client side filtering, it's a matter of basically getting the response at this point or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the end, like the REST API is a good example of like how we're going to want to have these like advanced client-side BFS type searches with all kinds of parameters, you know, and like I want to go in this direction or that direction, and I only want to go from dependency to dependent package or dependent package to dependency, that kind of thing. So in the end, yeah, like GraphQL is not going to be able to do every single possible traversal using path with just a single GraphQL query. That said, we do have those edge filters in there, and I think adding the edge filters for saying like go up or down, you know, between package node, package type, package namespace, package version, I think adding those like to the enum and filter and going up or down based on that filter being there or not is totally acceptable. But yeah, I think without any filters, the neighbors query should, like for a package name, it should return the namespace node, and it should return all the version nodes. It should go up and down the package tree as well.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion. Yeah. I don't know why it wasn't there. I think Mihai had some other ideas, so maybe we need to check with him.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, you can give the 10 minutes back. You can end a little bit early. Okay, awesome. All right, thank you everyone for attending. Hope to see you next time.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.